She was a virgin, given away by her own father, and lost her innocence to a man without a soul. 9 months later, she returns with a child and a secret that could bring down a millionaire. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Sweat trickled down Anthony Smith's forehead as he signed the papers with trembling hands. The mahogany desk gleamed under the yellowish light of the office, contrasting with the decay that emanated from every fiber of the man hunched over the documents. Lauren remained standing by the window, watching the rain that began to fall over Boston, the drops sliding down the glass like the tears she no longer allowed herself to shed. "It's done," Anthony muttered, pushing the papers to the other side of the desk. His voice sounded like crumpled paper, harsh and broken. "She's yours now." Gabriel Stewart didn't even look at the documents. His dark eyes remained fixed on Lauren, studying every curve of her delicate profile, the way she kept her shoulders straight even in the face of the humiliation unfolding in that room. There was something about her posture that intrigued him, a dignity that resisted despair, a beauty that seemed untouched despite the rot that surrounded her. 21 years old, said Gabriel, more to himself than to anyone else present. A virgin, according to your guarantee. Anthony swallowed hard, avoiding the gaze of his daughter who remained with her back to both of them. Lauren has always been a well-behaved girl. I made sure she was preserved. The irony of the words made Gabriel smile, a smile without warmth. That didn't reach his eyes. Preserved. As if she were a work of art kept in a safe waiting for the right buyer. But perhaps that was exactly what she was, he thought. A work of art about to be transferred from an incompetent owner to someone who knew how to appreciate her true rarity. Lauren finally turned, facing the man who had just bought her freedom as if buying property. Gabriel Stewart was exactly as she had imagined. Tall, elegant, with aristocratic features accentuated by a well-trimmed beard and dark hair combed back. But it was his eyes that disturbed her. There was a calculating coldness in them, as if he were capable of seeing through people, dismantling their defenses layer by layer until reaching the vulnerable core that everyone tried to hide. "Mr. Stewart," she said, her voice surprisingly firm, "I hope you understand that this was not my choice." Gabriel tilted his head slightly, a gesture that could be interpreted as courtesy or as recognition of an obvious fact. "Few choices in life are truly ours, Lauren. What matters is how we adapt to the circumstances imposed on us." She felt a shiver run down her spine. The way he pronounced her name, slowly, savoring each syllable, suggested an intimacy that didn't yet exist, but which he seemed to consider inevitable. It was as if he already possessed her in thought, as if the physical act of possession were merely a formality to be fulfilled at the appropriate moment. "Your father's debts," continued. Gabriel, rising from his chair with feline movements, included some particularly impatient creditors. Men who don't accept excuses or extensions consider our transaction a form of protection. Anthony remained silent, shrinking in his own shame. There were moments when Lauren almost felt sorry for him, a man who had once been respected, who had built a small construction company and supported his family with dignity. But gambling, drinking, and bad company had corroded everything, leaving only an empty shell of who he used to be. "Protection," repeated Lauren, testing the word on her tongue. "Is that what you call this?" Gabriel approached, stopping just inches from her. Up close she could smell his masculine cologne, something expensive and distinctive, with notes of sandalwood and spices. She could also see the small lines around his eyes, signs of a life experience she could only imagine. "I call it opportunity," he replied, his voice low and controlled. "An opportunity for you to discover what you're truly capable of when you no longer have to worry about survival." She laughed, a humorless sound that echoed through the silent office. "And what do you gain from this? What's your opportunity in this agreement?" For a moment, something passed through Gabriel's eyes, a shadow, a memory, perhaps even a vulnerability quickly suppressed. "That, my dear, you will discover in due time." The uniformed driver waiting in the adjoining room was summoned. It was time to leave. Lauren looked at her father one last time, searching his face for some sign of remorse, some word of farewell that might soften the cruelty of the moment. But Anthony had already turned to the window, his back bent by the weight of his own cowardice. "Let's go," said Gabriel, offering her his arm with a gallantry that strangely contrasted with the nature of the situation. "Your new life awaits." Lauren ignored the gesture and walked alone toward the door. If she was leaving as acquired property, at least she would keep her dignity intact until the last possible moment. Behind her, she heard Gabriel's firm steps, a constant reminder that she now belonged to a world where rules were written by men like him, men accustomed to getting everything they desired, regardless of the price others had to pay. The mansion emerged from the evening mist like a castle from a dark tale. Located in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods of Boston, the property extended over immense grounds, surrounded by high walls that isolated it from the outside world. Lauren observed through the Mercedes window as the electronic gates opened silently, revealing a tree-lined avenue where century-old trees seemed like guardians of ancient secrets. "Welcome to your new home," said Gabriel, his voice cutting through the silence that had dominated the hour-long journey from downtown. Lauren didn't respond. Her hands remained crossed in her lap, fingers intertwined with enough force to make her knuckles white. She had spent the trip trying to process the reality of her situation, but each attempt at rationalization ran into the absurdity of what was happening. In the 21st century, in a modern metropolis like Boston, she was being handed over to a stranger as payment for a debt. The car stopped in front of the main entrance, where marble columns supported a majestic portico. The architecture blended classical elements with contemporary touches, creating a sense of timelessness that seemed to suspend the property between past and present. Perfectly manicured gardens extended in all directions, but there was something disturbingly silent about that space, as if nature itself had been domesticated beyond its wild essence. Gabriel got out first and walked around the vehicle to open Lauren's door. The gesture could be interpreted as courtesy, but she noticed how he positioned his body, blocking any escape route she might consider. Not that there was anywhere to flee, the walls were too high, and beyond them stretched a Boston that now seemed to belong to another world. "Mrs. Thompson," said Gabriel, addressing a middle-aged woman waiting at the entrance. The housekeeper was elegant, with grey hair tied in an impeccable bun and a discreet but well-cut uniform. "This is Lauren. Hands sure that she is accommodated in the blue room." The woman nodded with an almost imperceptible bow. "Yes, Mr. Stewart, I've already arranged everything according to your instructions." Lauren followed Mrs. Thompson through wide corridors decorated with artworks that seemed to have come from museums. Paintings by American and foreign masters adorned the walls, interspersed with sculptures and objects that spoke of refined taste and virtually unlimited resources. But there was something oppressive about that ostentation, as if all that beauty were a golden prison, designed to dazzle and subjugate at the same time. "The mansion has 3 floors, explained Mrs. Thompson as they climbed a marble staircase that curved elegantly to the upper floor. "The ground floor houses the social rooms, the library, and Mr. Stewart's office. On the second floor are the guest rooms and some smaller offices. The third floor is Mr. Stewart's private area." They stopped before a dark wooden door carved with floral motifs. "This will be your room," said the housekeeper, opening the door to reveal an environment that took Lauren's breath away. The blue room justified its name. Shades of cobalt, navy, and sky blue harmonized in a decor that combined luxury and femininity. A 4-poster bed dominated the center of the room, with silk curtains that could provide privacy when closed. Large windows offered views of the gardens, but Lauren immediately noticed the decorative grilles that, beautiful as they were, clearly served a containment function. "Your clothes arrived yesterday," continued Mrs. Thompson, opening a closet that revealed dresses, skirts, blouses, and lingerie from brands Lauren only knew from magazines. "Mr. Stewart has very good taste in choosing women's wardrobes." The phrase made Lauren shiver. "He bought clothes for me before even meeting me." Mrs. Thompson avoided her gaze. "Mr. Stewart is a man who plans every detail. He rarely acts on impulse." And how often does he bring women here? The question hung in the air like an accusation. The housekeeper turned slowly, and for the first time, Lauren saw something like compassion in her tired eyes. "You're the first in 5 years," she said, her voice low. "Since Mrs. Elizabeth—" She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Lauren had heard the rumors, the stories whispered about Gabriel Stewart's wife who had died in mysterious circumstances. A young and beautiful woman who had married the billionaire in a discreet ceremony and was found dead a few months later. "What happened to her?" asked Lauren, but Mrs. Thompson was already heading for the door. "Dinner will be served at 8, said the housekeeper, ignoring the question. "Mr. Stewart expects your presence. There's a navy blue dress in the closet that would be appropriate for the occasion." Alone in the room, Lauren approached the window and discreetly tested the grills. They were solid, well fixed, designed to appear decorative, but functionally effective. She was 3 floors above the ground, surrounded by an extensive, walled property, in a room that, luxurious as it might be, was unequivocally a prison. She sat on the bed, feeling the high-quality mattress yield beneath her weight. The clothes in the closet were her exact size. He had really planned everything. But how did he know her measurements? How did he know her color preferences? The precision of the details suggested a level of surveillance that made her wonder how long he had been observing her life. A soft sound caught her attention. Classical music had begun to play somewhere in the house, the notes flowing through the walls like water. It was a melancholic piece, laden with a sadness that seemed impregnated in the very structure of the mansion. Lauren recognized the melody, Chopin, a nocturne her mother used to play on the piano before she died. The coincidence made her shudder. Or perhaps it wasn't a coincidence at all. Perhaps Gabriel Stewart knew much more about her than he had revealed. Perhaps this whole situation was part of a plan much more elaborate than a simple financial transaction. The navy blue dress fit Lauren's body as if it had been specifically tailored for her. The Italian silk fabric slid over her skin, and the elegant cut enhanced her curves without being vulgar. When she looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, a white marble environment with gold finishes that rivaled luxury spas, she barely recognized her own image. She looked like a sophisticated version of herself, as if the dress carried the power to transform her into the woman Gabriel expected her to be. At 8 o'clock sharp, a discreet knock at the door announced it was time to go downstairs. Mrs. Thompson was waiting in the hallway, ready to guide her to the dining room. During the journey, Lauren noticed details that had gone unnoticed upon arrival. Photographs in silver frames were strategically positioned throughout the corridors, but they all showed landscapes or objects, never people. It was as if the human history of that house had been carefully erased. The dining room was a study in masculine elegance. A rosewood table for 12 dominated the center of the environment, illuminated by a crystal chandelier that projected prisms of colored light. Along the dark wood-lined walls, Gabriel was already present, impeccable in a dark suit without a tie, the first button of his shirt open revealing a piece of tanned skin. "Punctual," he said, rising to pull out Lauren's chair. "I appreciate that quality." She sat without accepting his help, maintaining the upright posture her mother had taught her in better times. "I didn't have much choice about the time." Gabriel smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen on his face. "You always have choices, Lauren. The question is whether you're willing to bear the consequences of each one." Dinner was served by silent staff who appeared and disappeared like shadows. A starter of grilled shrimp with mango sauce, a main course of flounder with Sicilian lemon, risotto, a dessert of chocolate lava cake with vanilla ice cream. Each dish was a work of art, presented with the precision of a starred restaurant. The wine, a French Chardonnay that probably cost more than Lauren earned in a month, was served in crystal glasses that reflected the chandelier's light. "You're not eating," observed Gabriel, cutting a piece of fish with precise movements. "I'm not hungry." "Lie." He chewed slowly, eyes fixed on her. "You're nervous, insecure, probably afraid, but hungry, yes you are. I can hear your stomach protesting from here." The accuracy of the observation annoyed her. "You seem to know a lot about what I feel. It's my specialty." Gabriel took a sip of wine, savoring it before swallowing. Observing people, understanding their motivations, their fears, their desires. That's how I built my empire. And what kind of empire exactly? Diversified construction, technology, real estate investments. I buy companies in difficulty, restructure them, make them profitable again. He paused, his eyes shining with what could be dark humor. I specialize in taking broken things and making them work again. The metaphor didn't go unnoticed. And am I another one of your restructuring projects? You are. He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. That's good. You are an opportunity for redemption. Redemption for whom? For you or for me? Gabriel didn't answer immediately. He stood and walked to one of the windows overlooking the gardens. Outside, the full moon illuminated the perfectly trimmed trees and shrubs, creating dancing shadows that moved with the night breeze. My wife died 5 years ago, he finally said, his back to Lauren. Elizabeth. She was 23 when we married, 24, when she died. Lauren felt her heart race. Finally, he was talking about the subject that hung like a shadow over the entire situation. What happened to her? Gabriel turned, and for the first time, Lauren saw something like vulnerability in his eyes. She killed herself. Overdose of tranquilizers in the winter garden, surrounded by the flowers she loved so much. Why? Because I failed her. The confession came out as a harsh whisper. Because I didn't know how to love her the way she needed. Because I turned our marriage into a golden prison, and she preferred death to life with me. Lauren swallowed hard. And you think it will be different with me? Gabriel returned to the table but didn't sit down. He remained standing, hands resting on the back of the chair, knuckles white from the pressure. Elizabeth and you are very similar, he said. The same age, the same apparent fragility, hiding an impressive inner strength, the same ethereal beauty that seems untouched by the world. When I first saw you, it was as if she had returned to give me a second chance. I am not your dead wife, said Lauren, her voice firm despite the fear she felt. And I didn't come here to heal you of anything. No. You came because you had no choice. Gabriel finally sat down, but didn't return to eating. But now that you're here, perhaps we can help each other. How? You need security, stability, a future that doesn't depend on your father's incompetence. He hesitated again. I need to learn to love without destroying. Lauren studied him in silence. There was sincerity in his words, but also an arrogance that disturbed her, as if he believed he could plan and control even love, mold it according to his will as he did with his business. And if I don't want to be your experiment? She asked. Gabriel smiled again, but this time the smile didn't reach his eyes. Then you'll stay here until you change your mind, because, my dear Lauren, we both know you have nowhere to go. The truth of the words hit her like a punch to the stomach. She was completely at his mercy, in his house, wearing his clothes, eating his food. Her freedom was an illusion maintained only as long as he allowed it. Finish your dinner, said Gabriel, returning to his meal as if nothing had happened. Tomorrow we'll begin our work together. Lauren picked up the fork with trembling hands and forced herself to eat, each bite tasting like ashes in her mouth. Outside, the wind increased in intensity, making the trees bend as if they were subjects, paying reverence to an invisible and implacable king. The following days established a routine that Lauren didn't know whether to call education or domestication. Gabriel had hired a team of professionals who discreetly arrived at the mansion every morning: a French etiquette teacher, a dance instructor, an Italian fashion consultant, and even a sommelier to teach her about wines. It was as if he were molding her to occupy a specific role in his life, polishing each aspect of her personality until she fit perfectly into his plans. Keep your shoulders back, chin slightly raised, instructed Madame Reynolds, the etiquette teacher, as Lauren. Walk through the main hall balancing a book on her head. A lady must have regal bearing regardless of her origins. Lauren obeyed, but each lesson seemed designed to erase who she really was. During dance classes, she learned waltzes and tangos she would never dance outside that mansion. In sessions with the fashion consultant, she was instructed on which Colors enhanced her skin tone, which dress cuts were appropriate for each social occasion, how to wear jewelry without looking vulgar. Gabriel observed everything from a distance, appearing at the most unexpected moments to monitor her progress. Sometimes she felt him before she saw him, a presence that altered the temperature of the environment, making everyone present move more carefully, speak more softly. "You're progressing well," he said one afternoon, after the sommelier class had ended. Lauren had just tasted 3 different wines, correctly identifying their regions of origin and vintage years. "You have a naturally refined palate. Is that important for your plans?" she asked, wiping her mouth with a linen napkin. "Everything is important." Gabriel approached the table where the glasses still contained remnants of the tasted wines. He picked one up and drank the rest, an intimate gesture that made Lauren feel invaded. "When you're ready, there will be social events. Important. Dinners, charity receptions, art gallery openings. You'll need to know how to behave." "Ready for what exactly?" Gabriel didn't answer. Instead, he walked to one of the windows and stood watching the gardens where gardeners worked silently, trimming roses that already looked perfect. "Elizabeth hated these events," he finally said. "She said she felt like an object on display, something beautiful to be exhibited and admired. She didn't understand that it was part of the game." "What game?" "The game of power, of status, of influence." Gabriel turned to her, his dark eyes reflecting an intensity that made her instinctively back away. "People like us can't simply exist, Lauren. We are observed, judged, imitated. Our appearance, our behaviors, our choices, everything has consequences that extend far beyond our personal lives. People like us," she repeated. "I am not like you. Not yet, but you will be." The certainty in his voice disturbed her more than any explicit threat. It was as if he could see the future, as if he knew exactly how this story would end. That night, Lauren explored more of the mansion. During the day, there was always someone nearby, instructors, staff, Mrs. Thompson supervising everything. But after 10 at night, the house became silent, and she discovered she could walk the corridors without being disturbed. That's how she found the library on the ground floor. It was an impressive environment, with floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books in various languages. There was an entire section dedicated to American literature, another to French philosophy, an impressive collection of biographies of businessmen and politicians. But what caught her attention was a table in the center of the room, on which were scattered books on psychology, human behavior, and some titles that made her frown: The Art of Persuasion, Psychological Domination, and How to Break and Rebuild Personalities. "Interesting nighttime reading," said a voice behind her. Lauren turned quickly, her heart racing. Gabriel was leaning against the doorframe, wearing a dark silk robe over a white t-shirt. His hair was slightly disheveled, and for the first time she saw him in a state that could be called relaxed. "I didn't know anyone was awake," she said, trying to hide her nervousness. "I have chronic insomnia. I sleep just a few hours a night." Gabriel entered the library and approached the table where she was. "Found something interesting?" Lauren pointed to the psychology books. "I was wondering if these were instruction manuals." Gabriel laughed, a genuine sound that surprised her. "You're more perceptive than Elizabeth ever was. She never questioned anything, just passively accepted everything. Maybe she was afraid of you." "She was." The confession came without hesitation. "And you? Are you afraid of me?" Lauren studied him in silence. There was something different about him there, in the dim light of the library, away from the staff's gazes and the formality of dinners. He seemed more human, more accessible, but also more dangerous, because the vulnerability that occasionally shone in his eyes made her want to understand him, perhaps even save him from himself. "I am," she answered honestly, "but not the kind of fear that Elizabeth felt." "What kind, then?" "I'm afraid that you're right, that I really will become the person you want me to be, and that I'll like it." Gabriel moved closer, so close that she could feel the heat emanating from his body. "And would that be so terrible?" "It would if it meant losing who I really am." "And who are you really, Lauren?" His voice was lower now, almost a whisper. "The obedient daughter of a failed gambler, The poor girl who worked 2 jobs to pay the bills? Or perhaps the woman who is discovering that she can have everything she wants, as long as she's willing to pay the price. He reached out and lightly touched her face, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. The touch was soft, almost affectionate, but Lauren could feel the strength contained in those fingers, the capacity for gentleness and cruelty that coexisted in Gabriel Stewart. "Don't touch me," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Why? Because you don't want me to, or because you're afraid of wanting me to?" The question hung in the air between them. Lauren knew she should back away, return to her room, maintain the distance her sanity demanded. But there was something magnetic about him, an attraction that went beyond the physical and touched a part of her that had always remained dormant. 3 weeks later, Gabriel announced it was time for her first social event. The opening of an art gallery in Beacon Hill would gather the cultural and financial elite of Boston, and Lauren would make her official debut as his companion. The news filled her with a mixture of anticipation and terror she couldn't name. "The dress arrived this morning," he said during breakfast, served on the veranda overlooking the rose garden. "Valentino, created specifically for you. The seamstress made the adjustments based on your measurements." Lauren drank her coffee slowly, watching the petals falling from the red rose bushes like drops of blood on the green grass. "How did you get my exact measurements?" Gabriel smiled, spreading strawberry jam on toast. "I have my methods. You were watching me before buying me." "Watching is a very passive word for what I was doing," he chewed slowly, eyes fixed on her. "I was studying you, Lauren. Your habits, your schedules, your preferences. I knew you worked at the clothing store downtown 3 times a week, that you took the same bus every Tuesday and Thursday, that you stopped at the corner bakery to buy bread for your father before going home." The revelation was like a slap to the face. "For how long?" 6 months. Lauren felt her stomach turn. 6 months of surveillance, of a calculated obsession she hadn't even suspected. How many times had he been nearby without her noticing? How many seemingly casual decisions, the job at the store, the routes she chose, even the clothes she wore, had been influenced by his invisible presence? "You're a psychopath," she whispered. "I'm a man who knows what he wants." Gabriel leaned forward, his eyes intense. "And I wanted you from the first moment I saw you. When was that?" "On a March afternoon. You were leaving the public hospital after visiting an acquaintance. You wore a light blue dress, simple, cheap, but that enhanced your eyes. It had just rained, and you stopped to help an elderly lady who had slipped on the wet sidewalk. You stayed there, holding her hand until the ambulance arrived, even though you were late for work." The memory returned with crystal clarity. Mrs. Martinez, the neighbor who had broken her hip. Lauren had lost half a work shift and been docked pay, but she couldn't abandon the woman alone on the sidewalk. "It was at that moment I knew you were special," continued Gabriel. "Not for your beauty, though you are extraordinarily beautiful, but for your genuine kindness. In a city like Boston, where people pass each other like ghosts, you stopped to care for a stranger. And that gave you the right to stalk me? It gave me the certainty that you were the right person to fix what I broke." Lauren stood up abruptly, the chair scraping on the Portuguese stone floor. "I am not a remedy for your guilt, Gabriel. I am not a second chance for you to redeem yourself from what you did to your wife." "No," he agreed, remaining seated with a calmness that irritated her. "You are much more than that. You are the possibility of me finally doing something right." That afternoon, the Valentino dress was waiting for her in the room. It was a creation in black silk with Swarovski crystal details that created subtle constellations throughout the fabric. The cut was perfect, embracing each curve of her body like a second skin, elegant without being provocative, sophisticated without being ostentatious. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Mrs. Thompson had hired a makeup artist and a hairstylist who transformed Lauren into a glamorous version of herself. Her hair was tied in an elegant low bun, with a few loose strands framing her face. The makeup enhanced her green eyes and gave her lips a natural rosy tone. The jewelry, diamond earrings and a delicate necklace, completed the look without overwhelming it. Gabriel waited for her on the ground floor, impeccable in a tailored tuxedo. When he saw her coming down the stairs, something changed in his expression, an intensity she hadn't seen before. It was as if he were seeing not just her but also an idealized version of himself, reflected in his success in transforming her. "Perfect," he murmured, offering her his arm. "Elizabeth never looked as stunning as you do tonight." The comment should have flattered her, but instead it brought a familiar discomfort. She wasn't Elizabeth, but sometimes she felt Gabriel wanted her to be. The gallery was buzzing with the most influential names in Boston. Businessmen, politicians, artists, socialites, all circulated through the halls admiring the works while enjoying French champagne and sophisticated canapés. Lauren recognized faces she had seen in magazines and on television, people who moved billions and whose decisions affected the lives of millions. Gabriel led her through the crowd with mastery, introducing her simply as Lauren, without any explanation about her origin or the role she occupied in his life. The women studied her with barely disguised curiosity, trying to decipher who this mysterious young woman was who had captured the attention of the reclusive billionaire. The men openly admired her, some going so far as to greet her with kisses on the hand that lasted a little longer than was socially acceptable. "You're doing very well," Gabriel whispered in her ear during a pause between introductions. "You were born for this." But Lauren didn't feel natural. Each smile was forced, each word carefully calculated not to reveal her true origin. It was like performing a role in a play whose script she didn't fully know. That's when she saw Elizabeth. Not the real Elizabeth, of course, but a portrait of her on one of the gallery walls. The painting showed a young and ethereal woman, with long blonde hair and blue eyes of a profound sadness. She was sitting in a garden that Lauren immediately recognized, the same garden of the mansion where she now lived. "She was beautiful," said a female, voice beside her. Lauren turned and found a middle-aged woman, elegantly dressed, who observed the portrait with a melancholic expression. "You knew her?" asked Lauren. "We were childhood friends, Elizabeth Morgan, before she married Gabriel Stewart," the woman sighed. "A sweet soul who got lost in that marriage." "What do you mean?" The woman studied her carefully, as if trying to decipher something. "You look very much like her, you know. Same delicacy, same ethereal beauty. I hope you have better luck." Before Lauren could respond, she felt Gabriel's hand on her back, a possessive touch that guided her away from the conversation. "It's not a good idea to talk about Elizabeth in public," he said softly, his hot breath against her ear. "People like to create theories, spread rumors." "And what kind of rumors would those be?" Gabriel didn't answer, but his expression hardened. For the rest of the night, he kept her closer, as if afraid she might discover something he preferred to keep secret. When they finally returned home, it was past midnight. Lauren was exhausted, her feet ached from the high heels, and her head throbbed with all the information and impressions of the night. But there was also a strange sensation, as if she had crossed some invisible line. She was no longer just Anthony Smith's daughter, being kept in a golden captivity. Now she was officially Gabriel Stewart's companion, introduced to society as part of his life. 2 weeks after the gallery opening, Lauren woke in the middle of the night with nausea that made her run to the bathroom. She vomited violently, her body contracting in spasms that left her trembling and sweaty. Initially, she attributed the discomfort to the previous night's dinner, langoustine with champagne sauce that might not have been at the ideal point. But when the nausea repeated for the next 3 days, always at the same early morning hour, a terrible suspicion began to form in her mind. It wasn't possible. She had been careful, had been taking the pill religiously since she was 16. But then she remembered a night 3 weeks ago when Gabriel had appeared in her room for the first time. He hadn't been violent, hadn't forced her. It had been worse. It had been a calculated seduction, a surrender that she herself had allowed in a moment of vulnerability and emotional confusion. Mrs. Thompson knocked at the door while Lauren was still in the bathroom washing her face with cold water. "Miss Lauren, is everything all right? I heard noises." "I'm fine," she lied, drying her face with a soft towel, just a passing discomfort. But Mrs. Thompson had a mother's eyes and decades of experience caring for women. When Lauren left the bathroom, pale and still trembling, the housekeeper examined her with growing attention. "How long has this been happening?" she asked, her voice laden with an understanding Lauren wasn't yet ready to face. "A few days. It must be something I ate." Mrs. Thompson hesitated, as if carefully weighing her next words. "The nearest pharmacy is 15 minutes from here. I can get whatever is necessary." The offer was made with such tact that Lauren almost crumbled. During all those weeks in the mansion, Mrs. Thompson had been her only source of genuine humanity, the only person who treated her as a person rather than as a project or a possession. "A test," whispered Lauren. "Please." Mrs. Thompson nodded and left discreetly. While waiting, Lauren sat on the bed and tried to process what might be happening. If she was pregnant, and every fiber of her body already confirmed what her mind refused to accept, everything would change. Gabriel would have control over her that went far beyond the financial or psychological. He would have a biological tie, a connection she could never completely break. When Mrs. Thompson returned, she brought not only the pharmacy test, but also a thermometer, vitamins, and a look of silent solidarity that made Lauren feel less alone than she had in months. The test confirmed what she already knew. 2 shocking pink lines appeared on the digital screen like an irreversible sentence. Pregnant, 6 weeks according to her calculations. The baby had been conceived that first night when Gabriel had finally crossed the line between desire and possession, when she had yielded not out of fear but out of an attraction that still confused and terrified her. "What are you going to do?" asked Mrs. Thompson, sitting beside her on the bed. "I don't know." Lauren held the test in her hands as if it were a bomb about to explode. "He can't know, not yet. He'll find out eventually. Mr. Stewart is not a man to let details go unnoticed." Lauren thought about the 6 months of surveillance, the precision with which he had orchestrated every aspect of her capture. Mrs. Thompson was right. Gabriel would discover it sooner or later. The question was what to do with this knowledge before that happened. During the following days, she tried to act normally, but it was impossible to ignore the changes happening in her body. Her breasts were more sensitive, her skin seemed more luminous, and there was a constant fatigue that made her want to sleep all afternoon. Gabriel noticed the subtle alterations, of course. He always noticed everything. "You look different," he commented during dinner on a Thursday. "More radiant." Lauren almost choked on the wine she was drinking, something she would need to stop doing immediately. "Different how?" "More womanly, as if something inside you had awakened." His dark eyes studied her with that disturbing intensity. "It's beautiful to see." She forced a smile and changed the subject, but she could feel the weight of his gaze for the rest of the meal. Gabriel was suspecting something, or at least sensing that a significant change was happening. It was only a matter of time until his suspicions were confirmed. That's when Lauren made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't tell Gabriel about the pregnancy, not yet. She needed time to process, to plan, to decide how to use this information to her advantage. But she also couldn't continue pretending nothing was happening. She needed answers about Elizabeth, about what had really happened to Gabriel's first wife. Mrs. Thompson had mentioned that Elizabeth's personal belongings were still stored in the attic. "Mr. Stewart never had the courage to get rid of her things," she had said. "They're all up there, as if she might return at any moment." That night, after everyone had retired, Lauren silently climbed to the 3rd floor. She knew Gabriel's room was at the end of the corridor, and she could hear the muffled sound of classical music coming from there, probably another of his insomnia nights. She found the staircase leading to the attic at the end of a side corridor, hidden behind a door she had assumed was a cleaning closet. The attic was spacious and well organized, with labeled boxes and furniture covered by white sheets. It didn't take long to find the section dedicated to Elizabeth. There were several boxes with her name written in a masculine handwriting she recognized as Gabriel's. The first box contained clothes, expensive dresses, silk lingerie, shoes that never seemed to have been worn. Everything in the same style Gabriel had chosen for Lauren, elegant, feminine, discreetly sensual. It was as if he had a specific mold of what he considered the perfect woman. The second box revealed photographs, Elizabeth at various moments in her life, child, teenager, young adult. Lauren was shocked by the resemblance between them. They weren't identical, but there was a similar ethereal quality, a delicacy that made them almost interchangeable. In some photos, Elizabeth appeared alongside Gabriel, always smiling, but her eyes seemed distant as if her mind were elsewhere. It was in the third box that Lauren found the diary. It wasn't a traditional diary, but a series of notebooks with sparse notes, fragmented thoughts, drawings. Elizabeth's handwriting was delicate, feminine, but there was a growing urgency in the more recent pages that made Lauren's heart race. "He watches me all the time," said an entry from 6 months before. Her death. "Even when he's not present, I feel his eyes, as if each movement of mine were catalogued, analyzed, judged." Pages further on, "I tried to leave today. I made it to the gate, but guilt brought me back. He does so much for me, gives me everything. How can I be so ungrateful? But why do I feel like a bird in a golden cage?" And then the entry that made Lauren's blood freeze. "I discovered I'm pregnant. 3 months. I don't know how to tell him. I'm afraid he'll be too happy that it will make him trap me even more. Sometimes I think he loves me so much he's capable of killing me to keep me forever." The following pages were stained, as if tears had fallen on the ink. The last entry, dated a week before her death, was a single line. "He knows, and now there's no way out." Lauren remained in the attic until dawn, reading and rereading Elizabeth's diary, each word confirming her worst fears. Gabriel's last wife had been kept in the same golden prison, subjected to the same psychological control, and when she became pregnant, something had changed drastically. The entries became increasingly desperate, speaking of nightmares, of a constant sensation of being watched, of a growing fear that Gabriel would never let her leave. When she went down for breakfast, Gabriel was already at the table, reading financial reports while drinking his espresso. He raised his eyes when she appeared, and for a moment, Lauren was sure he knew where she had spent the night. But his smile was the same as always, controlled, possessive, but without signs of acute suspicion. "Slept poorly?" he asked, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. "You look tired." "Nightmares," she replied, which wasn't exactly a lie. Elizabeth's words had transformed into disturbing images that haunted her during the few hours of sleep she had managed. Gabriel frowned with apparent concern. "Perhaps we should consult a doctor. Stress can cause various health problems." The suggestion made Lauren's heart race. A doctor would discover the pregnancy immediately, and then Gabriel would know. She needed more time, needed to fully understand what had happened to Elizabeth before revealing her own secret. "It's not necessary," she said quickly. "I'm still just adapting. It's normal." But Gabriel didn't seem convinced. During the following days, she noticed he was more attentive, more present. He cancelled several business meetings to have lunch with her, appeared at unexpected moments during her classes with the instructors, asked questions about her well-being with a frequency that bordered on obsession. It was Mrs. Thompson who alerted her about what was happening. "He hired a private nurse," said the housekeeper one morning while tidying Lauren's room. "Said it's to monitor your health, ensure you're receiving all the necessary care." "A nurse for what?" Mr. Stewart is not a man to leave anything to chance. If he suspects something is different with you." Lauren didn't need her to finish the sentence. Gabriel was tightening the siege, and soon she would no longer be able to hide the pregnancy. It was time to act. That afternoon, she made a desperate decision. She waited until Gabriel was in his office, busy with an international video conference, and then went up to his room on the 3rd floor. She had never been there before. It was forbidden territory, the sanctum sanctorum of Gabriel Stewart. The room was surprisingly austere for a man of his resources. King-size bed with simple white sheets, dark wood furniture, some few artworks on the walls. But what caught her attention was the entire wall covered with photographs of Elizabeth. These weren't the family photos she had seen in the attic. but images that seemed to have been taken without the woman's knowledge. Elizabeth in the garden. Elizabeth reading in the library. Elizabeth sleeping. It was an altar of obsession, a shrine dedicated to a dead woman. Lauren approached the photos, studying each one. In some, Elizabeth seemed to be looking directly at the camera, as if she knew she was being photographed. Her face showed a mixture of fear and resignation that Lauren recognized with growing horror. It was the same expression she saw in the mirror every morning. Admiring my collection? Gabriel's voice behind her made Lauren turn abruptly, her heart racing. He was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, an unreadable expression on his face. I got lost looking for the bathroom, she lied, knowing he wouldn't believe. Her. The bathroom is on the second floor, Lauren. You purposely came up to the third. Gabriel entered the room, closing the door behind him. The question is, what did you come looking for here? Lauren raised her chin, deciding there was no more sense in pretending. Answers. About Elizabeth, about what really happened to her. Gabriel walked to the wall of photographs, running his fingers over one of the images with a tenderness that strangely contrasted with the usual coldness of his gestures. Elizabeth was fragile, he said, his voice distant. Beautiful, delicate, but fundamentally broken. I tried to protect her, give her everything she needed, but she couldn't accept my love. Your love or your obsession? He turned to her, his dark eyes shining with a dangerous intensity. Is there a difference when you truly love? Yes, there is. Love liberates. Obsession imprisons. Gabriel laughed, a humorless sound. What a romantic view you have of love. Let me tell you what true love is, Lauren. True love is being willing to do anything to protect the loved one, even if she doesn't understand. It's knowing that the world out there is cruel and dangerous, and creating a refuge where she can be safe and cared for. Elizabeth didn't feel safe. She felt like a prisoner. How do you know that? The question came out sharp as a blade. Lauren hesitated for a moment, then decided to put all her cards on the table. Because I read her diary. I know she was pregnant when she died. I know she tried to escape several times. I know she was afraid of you. The silence that followed was deafening. Gabriel remained motionless for long seconds, processing the confession. Then slowly a smile appeared on his lips, not the controlled smile she knew, but something wilder, more dangerous. So you know everything, he said, approaching her with measured steps. You know Elizabeth was expecting my child. You know she was ungrateful enough to want to take my baby away. You know she chose death over living with me. She didn't choose death. You forced her to it. I? Gabriel stopped in front of her, so close that she could see the small scars on his face, marks of a life she could only imagine. I didn't touch Elizabeth that night. I didn't need to. What do you mean? Want to know what really happened? Elizabeth discovered that I knew about the pregnancy before she even told me. She discovered that I had prepared an entire future for the three of us, her, me, and our child, a future from which she could never escape. Gabriel reached out and touched Lauren's face, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. When she realized she was truly trapped forever, that she would never be free again, she made the only choice she had left. You killed her psychologically. I loved her in the only way I knew how. His hand moved down to her neck, not threateningly, but with a possessiveness that made Lauren tremble. And now I'm going to love you the same way. That's when Lauren said the words that would change everything between them. Then you already know that I'm pregnant too. Gabriel was petrified. His hand stopped on her neck. His eyes widened slightly, and for a moment he looked like a man who had seen a ghost. What? The word came out as a harsh whisper. 6 weeks, confirmed Lauren, keeping her voice firm despite the terror she felt. Your child is growing inside me exactly as it grew inside Elizabeth. Gabriel backed away as if he had been punched. His hands trembled slightly, the first time Lauren had seen him completely lose control. Are you sure? Yes. He turned his back to her, his hands running through his hair in a gesture of despair she had never seen before. When he spoke again, His voice sounded different, younger, more vulnerable, more human. "This time it will be different," he said, more to himself than to her. "This time I'll do everything right." In the weeks that followed the revelation of the pregnancy, Gabriel transformed into a completely different man. The calculating coldness gave way to an obsessive concern that made Lauren feel like a fragile object about to break. He hired not just a nurse but a complete medical team that visited her 3 times a week. Nutritionists elaborated specific menus for pregnant women, specialized personal trainers, created safe exercise routines, and even the air in the mansion was purified with special systems to ensure no pollutant harmed the baby. "You're overdoing it," said Lauren during a breakfast that more resembled a medical consultation, with the nurse checking her blood pressure while she tried to eat. "Women have been having children for thousands of years without all this apparatus." Gabriel watched her from his chair, eyes fixed on every movement she made. "Other women aren't carrying my child," he replied, as if that explained everything. The possessiveness had reached alarming levels. He had cancelled all social commitments, claiming Lauren needed rest. The classes with private instructors were suspended. Even walks in the garden were supervised, with Gabriel insisting on accompanying her whenever she left the mansion's interior. "He's behaving exactly as he did with Elizabeth," murmured Mrs. Thompson during one of the rare occasions when they were alone. The housekeeper seemed genuinely concerned. "It got much worse after she became pregnant. He treated her as if she were made of glass." "And how did Elizabeth react?" "She became increasingly depressed, stopped eating, spent hours locked in her room, talked to herself, said she felt like a pet too expensive to be let loose." Mrs. Thompson lowered her voice even more. "Miss, I'm afraid history will repeat itself." Lauren was afraid of that too. The difference was that unlike Elizabeth, she didn't intend to be a passive victim. The pregnancy had changed something inside her, not just hormones but a primal strength, a protective instinct that extended to both the baby and herself. She began to plan. That's when Ryan appeared. Lauren recognized him immediately, even from a distance, through her bedroom window. Ryan Harrison had been her boyfriend for 2 years, ending the relationship just 6 months before she was sold to Gabriel. He was a simple man, a mechanic, honest, with modest dreams and a heart, bigger than his financial possibilities. She had broken up with him because she knew he deserved someone who could love him without the complications her family situation brought. Now he was there, at the mansion's entrance, wearing a security uniform and talking with the head of Gabriel's protection team. Lauren ran down the stairs, her heart racing with a mixture of joy and terror. "Ryan," she called, stopping at the main door. He turned, and when their eyes met, she saw relief and concern blend in his familiar expression. He had changed little. He still had the same honest brown eyes, the same crooked smile that used to make her heart race. "Lauren," he said, approaching but maintaining a respectful distance, "thank God you're all right." "What are you doing here?" "Working. I got a job with the security company that provides services to Mr. Stewart." He lowered his voice, looking around to make sure they weren't being overheard. "I've been looking for you for months. Your father said you had arranged a job as a housekeeper, but I never fully believed it." Gabriel appeared behind Lauren like a silent shadow. "Any problem here?" he asked, his voice loaded with an authority that made Ryan instinctively straighten his shoulders. "Mr. Stewart," said Ryan, extending his hand. "Ryan Harrison, from the night security team. I was just greeting the miss. We know each other from the neighborhood." Gabriel didn't shake the offered hand. Instead, he studied Ryan with the same calculating look he used to evaluate investments. "Know each other how?" "We were neighbors," Lauren quickly replied, before Ryan could tell the truth. "The Harrison family lived near ours." The lie didn't go unnoticed by Gabriel. She could see in his eyes that he knew there was more to the story, but he just nodded briefly. "Mr. Harrison, I'm sure you have work to do. Lauren needs to rest." It was a polite but unequivocal dismissal. Ryan nodded, but before walking away, he looked directly at Lauren. "If you need anything, I'll be around," he said, and there was an implicit promise in his words. That night, Gabriel went straight to the point during dinner. "Ryan Harrison is not just a neighbor," he stated, cutting the grilled salmon with precise movements. "You had a relationship." Lauren didn't try to deny it. "We did. It ended before I came here." "Why?" "Because I knew it had no future. My family was bankrupt. He could barely support himself. It didn't make sense to continue together when I couldn't reciprocate his feelings." Gabriel took a sip of wine, his eyes never leaving her face. "And what feelings were those?" "He loved me and you." The question hung in the air between them. Lauren knew her answer would be crucial, that it would define how Gabriel would react to Ryan's presence in the mansion. "I was fond of him," she said carefully, "but not love, not the way he deserved." "And now, seeing him again, have your feelings changed?" Lauren looked at him directly. "Now I'm pregnant with your child and living in your house. My feelings for anyone else are irrelevant." Gabriel smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Very diplomatic. But you didn't answer my question." "I don't feel anything for Ryan beyond gratitude for him worrying about me when I disappeared." It was a lie, and they both knew it. Seeing Ryan again had awakened memories of a time when she was free to make her own choices, when she could love without fear, when her feelings weren't analyzed and dissected like specimens in a laboratory. On the following nights, Ryan was part of the security team that patrolled the mansion's gardens. Lauren sometimes saw him through the windows, a familiar figure amid the strange environment that had become her life. They didn't speak again, but there was a silent communication between them, glances that crossed, small gestures that confirmed he was there for her. Gabriel noticed, of course. He always noticed everything. "I'm thinking of changing the security company," he commented casually one morning. "I think we need more experienced professionals." "Why?" asked Lauren, trying to keep her voice neutral. "I've noticed some flaws in the system, blind spots that could be exploited by someone with less honorable intentions." Gabriel folded the newspaper he was reading and looked at her directly. "Especially someone who knew the house's routine well." The threat was subtle but clear. Ryan was in danger, and Gabriel wouldn't hesitate to remove him if he considered it necessary. That's when Lauren realized she needed to act quickly. Ryan's presence had changed the situation's dynamics, offering her a possibility of escape that didn't exist before. But it had also made Gabriel more paranoid, more possessive. It was a double-edged sword that could either free her or seal her, even more deeply in her golden prison. That night, for the first time in weeks, she went up to the attic again. This time, she wasn't just looking for answers about Elizabeth. She was looking for a way not to repeat the tragic fate of Gabriel's first wife. Because now she was certain of one thing. If she stayed much longer in that mansion, she would lose not just her freedom, but also her sanity. And unlike Elizabeth, she had someone willing to help her escape. The opportunity came 3 nights later, during a storm that broke over Boston with a fury that seemed to echo Lauren's inner chaos. The thunder masked any noise, and the torrential rain drastically reduced visibility in the mansion's gardens. Gabriel had left for an emergency meeting, something about one of his investments in crisis, and wouldn't return until dawn. Ryan had managed to communicate with her through Mrs. Thompson, who had revealed herself as an unexpected ally. The housekeeper was genuinely concerned about what she saw happening, the repetition of the obsessive pattern that had led Elizabeth to death. "I can't watch this again," she said, handing Lauren a small note. Once was enough. The plan was simple. Ryan was on duty at the East Gatehouse, the furthest from the main house. At 2 in the morning, he would temporarily deactivate the cameras in that sector, later claiming it had been a technical problem caused by the storm. Lauren would have 15 minutes to get there, and then they would flee together. When the EDE moment came, Lauren was ready. She had saved some clothes in a small backpack, along with the money she had managed to save from the small amounts Gabriel occasionally gave her for personal expenses. It wasn't much, but it would be enough for a few weeks while they decided what to do. The run through the drenched gardens was terrifying. Each shadow seemed to hide a guard. Each noise from the storm sounded like footsteps pursuing her. When she finally reached the gatehouse, Ryan was waiting for her with a borrowed car, engine running, ready to depart. "I thought you wouldn't." "Come," he said, helping her into the vehicle. "I thought the same," replied Lauren, trembling as much from cold as from adrenaline. They drove through the rainy dawn, leaving Boston behind and heading toward the countryside. Ryan had secured a small apartment in a town in rural Massachusetts through a friend, a place where they could hide while planning their next steps. During the first weeks, Lauren felt genuinely free for the first time in months. She could wake up when she wanted, go out alone to buy groceries, talk with other people without each word being analyzed and catalogued. Ryan cared for her with a tenderness that drastically contrasted with Gabriel's controlling obsession. "You're different," said Ryan one afternoon as he watched her prepare lunch. "More mature, stronger in a way." Lauren instinctively touched her belly, where the baby was beginning to make itself noticed. She had told Ryan about the pregnancy, and he had accepted the situation with a generosity that reminded her why she had fallen in love with him years ago. "I'll love this baby as if it were mine," he had promised, "no matter who the father is." But as much as she tried to convince herself she was safe, Lauren knew Gabriel wouldn't easily give up. He had unlimited resources, contacts everywhere, and an obsession that wouldn't accept defeat. It was only a matter of time until he found her. 3 months passed. The baby grew inside her, its contours becoming more defined with each medical consultation at the small town hospital. Ryan had secured a job at a local garage, and they began to build a routine that resembled a normal life. Lauren allowed herself to believe that perhaps they had managed to escape. That's when she woke one morning and knew with absolute certainty that she needed to return. It wasn't a rational decision, it was something more primitive, more instinctive. During the night she had dreamed of Gabriel, not nightmares but something more disturbing. Dreams where he appeared vulnerable, broken, desperate. She had awakened with the irrational conviction that he needed her as much as she had needed him, albeit in completely different ways. "You've gone crazy," said Ryan when she told him about her decision. "He's dangerous, Lauren. You saw what happened to his first wife." "I'm not Elizabeth," she replied, a protective hand on her belly. "And now I have something she didn't have when she died." "What?" "Real power over him. This baby isn't just his child, it's his obsession, his chance at redemption, his last hope of fixing what went wrong in the past. As long as I carry this, baby, he'll do anything I ask." Ryan studied her as if seeing a stranger. "And after the baby is born?" Lauren smiled, and there was something in her expression that made Ryan instinctively back away. During those months away from the mansion, she had had time to think, to plan, to fully understand the psychological dynamics between her and Gabriel. Elizabeth had died because she was too fragile to use the weapons she had. Lauren wouldn't make the same mistake. After the baby is born, I will have created a new version of Gabriel Stewart, a version that loves without destroying. The journey back to Boston was silent. Ryan had insisted on accompanying her, at least until he was sure she would be safe. When they arrived at the mansion's gates, Lauren was 5 months pregnant, her belly clearly visible under the simple dress she wore. The gates opened before she even touched the intercom. Gabriel must have been advised of her arrival, or perhaps he had never stopped monitoring her, even from a distance. He was waiting at the main entrance. During the months of separation, he had visibly lost weight. His face was more angular, there were more lines around his eyes, and his hair showed grey strands she didn't remember seeing before. But what shocked her most was the vulnerability in his eyes, a naked pain he didn't try to hide. "You came back," he said, his voice hoarse. "I did." Gabriel looked at Ryan, who remained beside the car, tense and ready to act if necessary. "He can leave," said Gabriel. "You're home now." "He'll leave when I say he can," corrected Lauren, stepping forward. "And we're both going inside to talk. There are rules that need to be established if you want me to stay." For a moment, Gabriel seemed about to protest, to reassume the control he had always exercised over her. But then his eyes moved down to her belly, and something changed in his expression. He briefly nodded to Ryan and moved away from the door. "Then let's talk," he said. When Lauren entered the mansion, it was no longer as a prisoner. It was as a conqueror returning to claim her territory. Because during those months away, she had learned something fundamental. Sometimes the only way to win a game is to completely change the rules. And she was ready to rewrite all the rules of Gabriel Stewart's life. The confrontation happened in the library, the same place where months ago Lauren had begun to understand the complexity of the man who had bought her. But now, she was no longer the frightened girl who explored the mansion in the early hours. She was a pregnant woman, determined, who had proven to herself that she could survive away from that world of luxury and control. Gabriel watched her as if she were an apparition, something he had conjured through pure force of will. "You have no idea what I went through these months," he said, his voice laden with an exhaustion she had never seen in him. "Tell me," said Lauren, sitting in the leather armchair he used to occupy during his nighttime reading sessions. "I hired detectives, investigators, hackers. I turned over every inch of the country looking for you. I knew you were pregnant, knew you needed medical care, and the idea that something might happen to you or the baby." He stopped, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of despair. "I almost went mad. But you didn't bring me back by force when you found me." Gabriel looked at her with surprise. "You know that I knew where you were?" "Of course I knew. A man with your resources and obsessions doesn't lose track of someone for 3 months. You knew exactly where I was, but you chose to leave me in peace. Why?" For a long moment, Gabriel didn't answer. He walked to the window overlooking the garden where Elizabeth had died, hands crossed behind his back. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more human than Lauren had ever heard. "Because I understood that if I brought you back by force, you would be exactly like Elizabeth. And this time, I would lose not just you, but also my child." He turned to her. "I realized my love was destroying everything I most wanted to protect. So you learned to love me from a distance. I learned that sometimes loving means letting go, even when every fiber of your being screams against it." Lauren rose slowly, one hand supporting the belly that now clearly showed her condition. "And now that I've returned of my own free will, what will you do?" "I don't know." The confession came out as a whisper. "For the first time in my adult life, I don't have a plan. I don't know how to love without controlling, how to protect without imprisoning." "Then I'll teach you." Gabriel looked at her with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "How?" "First, you'll dismiss the obsessive medical team. I'll do my prenatal care with a normal doctor in a normal hospital, like any pregnant woman. Second, the etiquette classes and all this staging of transforming me into a sophisticated doll are over. Third, I'm going to work." "Work? You don't need to." "I do need to, Gabriel. I need to have my own identity, my own goals. You can support me financially, but you can't support me emotionally. That needs to come from within me." Gabriel seemed to be processing each word as if it were a revelation. "And what about us? About what we are to each other?" Lauren approached him, stopping just inches away. "We'll discover that together. Without pressure, without deadlines, without expectations. We'll let our feelings develop naturally. And if I can't? If my controlling nature returns? Then I'll leave again. And this time it will be definitive." She touched his face, feeling the unshaven beard that indicated poorly slept nights. "But I believe you can change, Gabriel. I believe it because I've seen the man you are beneath, all that armor of control." In the months that followed, the dynamics of the mansion changed completely. Gabriel fulfilled each of Lauren's demands. She started working part-time at an NGO that cared for at-risk children, ironically, using the social skills he had financed for her to learn. She did her prenatal care at a public hospital, insisting on paying from her own salary, even if it was a minimal fraction of what Gabriel could pay for private care. The relationship between them blossomed slowly, like a plant growing in carefully prepared soil. Gabriel learned to ask questions about her day instead of monitoring her every movement. He learned to respect when she needed space, to share his concerns instead of trying to resolve them unilaterally. And Lauren, in turn, began to see the man behind the obsession. Gabriel was someone who had grown up believing love meant possession because that's how he learned. His parents had loved him by controlling every aspect of his life, molding him to be the perfect heir. Elizabeth had been his first attempt to replicate this model, and the result had been disastrous. "My mother died when I was 15, he told her one night, as they walked through the garden where Elizabeth had been found. "My father told me it was because I hadn't been a good enough son to keep her alive, that if I had been more obedient, more perfect, she would have had reasons to continue living." "Your father was wrong," said Lauren simply. "I know that now, but for decades I carried that guilt. When I met Elizabeth, I thought that if I were perfect for her, if I anticipated all her needs, she would never leave me. But you ended up suffocating her. I ended up killing her." The confession came loaded with pain. Not physically, but emotionally. Lauren stopped and turned to him. They were exactly at the spot where Elizabeth had been found, but now the space had been transformed into a garden of white roses, a tribute, but also a renewal. "Elizabeth made a choice," she said, "a terrible, tragic choice, but still a choice. You can carry responsibility for your part in it, but you can't carry the guilt for hers." It was that night they made love for the first time since she had returned. It wasn't the calculated possession of that first time, months ago. It was an encounter between two adults who had learned, through pain and error, how to connect without destroying each other. The baby was born on a rainy October morning. A girl with green eyes like her mother's and dark hair like her father's. Gabriel cried when he held her for the first time, tears of joy, of relief, of a hope he hadn't allowed himself to feel for years. "What shall we call her?" he asked, watching the daughter who slept serenely in his arms. "Hope," said Lauren without hesitation. Gabriel smiled, a genuine, full smile that completely transformed his face. Hope Stewart Smith. Perfect. 2 years later, they married. It wasn't a grandiose ceremony, but an intimate celebration in the mansion's garden, surrounded by friends and little Hope, who was taking her first steps among the roses that bloomed where once there had been only pain. Ryan was present now, married to a nurse he had met at the hospital where Lauren had given birth. He and Gabriel had developed a mutual respect based on the love they both felt for her and the understanding that each had played a crucial role in her journey. "You saved me," said Gabriel to Lauren during their honeymoon on an isolated beach in North Carolina, where she had insisted on going instead of Paris or Rome. "We saved each other," she corrected, watching the waves breaking on the golden sand. And it was true. Gabriel had learned that true love means creating space for the other person to grow, not building golden prisons. Lauren had discovered that strength doesn't just mean resisting, but also transforming, both herself and the people around her. The Boston mansion continued to be their home, but now it was truly a home, filled with a child's laughter, with conversations about the future, with plans built by 4 hands. Elizabeth's photographs were respectfully stored away, but the walls now displayed moments of a new story, a story of redemption, transformation, and a love that had learned to flourish in freedom. Years later, when Hope asked about how her parents met, they would tell a softened version of the truth. But in intimate moments when they were alone, Gabriel and Lauren remembered the dark journey that had brought them there. And they were grateful, not for the suffering, but for the strength it had forged in them, for the wisdom that had been born from pain, and for the love that had emerged from the ashes of their former selves. In the end, they had proven that even the darkest stories